Hello, and welcome back to Post Traumatic Revelations. I am your host, Afrah Caraballo, and in today's episode, we are talking about our feelings. We're looking at the concept of permission to feel. We spend a lot of time and energy, a lot of effort hiding, denying, burying, ignoring, avoiding our feelings. We don't really allow ourselves, we don't really give ourselves permission to feel our emotions. And by now, you may have noticed that I really harp on the idea of permission a lot. And that's because the more I work with myself and the more I work with other trauma survivors, the more I realize how crucial, how beneficial, how pivotal, how important permission is. Without permission to heal, you won't. And without permission to feel, you suffer. And then you create dis-ease and disorder in your mind, in your body, in your spirit. If you cut yourself, for example, in the kitchen, or slice off a finger while you're working in the tool shed, you have to decide what you're going to do about it. Do you just keep working, bleeding all over your project, bleeding all over the food? Do you stop, assess the damage, get a band aid? Maybe you call someone for help to control the bleeding. Maybe you need stitches, so maybe you end up going to the hospital. But at every instance, you must give yourself permission to stop, assess, and address the damage. If you don't, the situation can get worse. The cut, the broken bone, the gunshot, the damage can get worse. And the same is true for our mental and emotional health. We have cuts, we have bruises, we have losses. And when we don't address those losses, sadness can become depression, worry can become anxiety, anger can become explosive rage. So, left unaddressed, small discomforts can become chronic disease. Every feeling, every emotion is valid and deserves our attention. Emotions are messages. They let us know we care. Feelings let us know we're alive. We feel hunger, we feel anger, we feel fear, we feel tired, lonely, afraid, happy, safe. We feel disappointment, excitement, pleasure, pain, suffering, bliss. All of these feelings are messages. They influence and change our physical expression. Our physiological makeup changes depending on what we're feeling. Our eyes, our hearts, our blood, our skin, our arms, our legs, our hands, our feet, our mouths, everything responds to our emotions. And our emotional frequency affects us on a chemical level. Our emotions are not only messages for us, but they also cause chemical responses in our bodies that send messages to the world around us. Now, we've all heard about pheromones, right? The exchange of chemicals in our bodies, and in the air when we feel attracted to someone? Well, we release these chemicals and we release these signals in other ways as well. So if we're feeling afraid or anxious or angry, there are chemical makeups to that as well. And we're sending those messages out to our environment, right? We don't respond in the same way when we're feeling safe as when we're feeling scared. There's a chemical change, there's chemical signals that affect us and the world around us. So, acknowledging, noticing, validating our feelings is extremely important. When we're considering trauma and recovery, we need to consider our chemical makeup, right? Fight, flight, and freeze, those are chemical responses that affect our body, our way of thinking, our way of feeling. Knowing what you're feeling and how it's related to what's happening in your life right now, what's happened in your life in the past, or what you think might happen, right? So much of depression is about what's happened in the past, and anxiety is our feelings and concerns about what might happen in the future, right? And so, knowing what you're feeling about what's happened to you, what is happening to you, what might happen to you. Because, see, we have this ability to manipulate our feelings using our thoughts, and vice versa. Our feelings can affect how we think about a certain situation. So, permission to feel our emotions can mean the difference between freedom and prison. As I've said before, judgment, guilt, and shame are other barriers to all healing. And I say it because I truly believe it. I've seen it over and over in my life, in the lives of people that I work with, that we can get frozen, right? That guilt and shame are powerful emotions that keep us stuck in our post traumatic prisons. We're so afraid, ashamed, disgusted, and oftentimes ignorant about our post traumatic selves. We hide, we deny, we ignore, we suppress our feelings. We hide and swallow our anger, our sadness, our fears, our concerns, our shame, our guilt. We're so afraid of our emotions, we want to pretend like we don't even have them. But you got to name it to tame it. If you don't know what you're feeling, you can't validate it. You can't control it. Some people I've noticed can't really tell the difference between relaxed and tired, or excitement or anxiety. Post traumatically, our feelings get all distorted, all messed up, all confusing, but we must find ways to identify them, to categorize them, to organize them, to label them so that we can manage them, because all feelings will find their way to expression. All feelings will find a way out. The body can only hold so much. You will either implode with unaddressed depression, and that can look like negative self talk, self harming behaviors, suicide in the extreme cases, or you can explode with unaddressed anxiety, and that can be verbal or physical abuse or psychological abuse or violence, and in extreme cases, homicide. Feeling your feelings, validating the sadness, the loss, the worry about future loss. Every emotion matters. Every single emotion tells us that we care, because you don't get angry if you don't care. And you don't feel sad if you don't care. You don't feel scared or worried if you don't care. And numbing out, ignoring, invalidating, dismissing our feelings, avoiding our emotions leads to dis-ease and disorder. There are countless studies showing the correlation, the connection, the relationship between chronic depression and diabetes, and depression and asthma, and depression and cancer, and depression and cardiovascular, and different inflammatory diseases, or chronic anxiety and its connection to heart disease and high blood pressure, or heart attacks and respiratory issues. So, giving yourself permission to feel sadness, to feel mad, to feel scared, lonely, hungry, angry, tired, allowing yourself to feel your emotions actually starts a process toward healing. Some people have historical invalidated trauma. There's a history of invalidation in minority groups, in women, in people of color, different religious groups, different economic statuses, that your education or your race or your religion or your gender have somehow invited people who feel entitled to invalidate your needs, your feelings, your emotions. But the thing is it doesn't matter if you're part of an oppressed group historically or an individual being traumatized, abused, neglected, dehumanized in any way. There's this thing that happens post traumatically where the victim starts to blame themselves. So, whether it's groups, cultures, individuals, there's also this possibility that the victim, the individual, has internalized the negative beliefs of the oppressor, the negative beliefs and justifications of the abuser. And so that internal dialogue, that internal conversation, internal permission to feel your pain, to feel your sadness, to feel your feelings, permission to feel your feelings and get the healing it's always an inside job. You must give yourself permission to feel before you can do anything about what you're feeling. If you don't acknowledge the sadness, you can't address the sadness. You can't get comfort for the sadness. You must give yourself permission to feel mad, anger, before you can do anything about what you're feeling mad or angry about. So, as I've worked with, first of all, myself, the internal work, actually practicing what I preach, right? Giving myself permission to feel the feelings of the abused 7-year-old me, or the neglected or abandoned 8-year-old me. As I am doing this internal work myself, and as I've worked with several of my clients, many of whom are military veterans who struggle to allow themselves to feel anger. I hear things like, Afra, I have anger problems. I don't trust my anger. I'm scared I'm going to hurt my wife. I'm scared I'm going to hurt my kids. I'm scared I'm going to destroy the house. That there's this fear of feeling the anger, this fear of validating the anger associated with the traumas they've endured. What we have learned and what we're discovering together is that never does the anger just happen. A lot of times I hear everything was fine and all of a sudden I exploded. And then we do a little bit of exploring and we backtrack. And usually that explosion of rage was building up for days, sometimes weeks, right? There's the frustration that happened because somebody cut you off on the road. There is the anger that happened at the grocery store. Somebody cut in front of you in line, or the cashier said or did something that upset you. Or maybe there is a conversation or discussion that you need to have with your partner, your spouse, that you avoid. Or maybe there is another bill that came in the mail and you're distracted and now you have a late fee. But there are these little things that just happen in life. And if these little irritants, these little frustrations, the misunderstood text, right? The misunderstood joke or just timing of things, like life happens, right? And all these little unaddressed irritants can build up. And if they're adding up and building up on top of already existing chronic depression, chronic anxiety, chronic PTSD, we have a real mess. We have dis-ease, and dis-ease leads to disorder, and disorder leads to dis-ease, right? And so dis-ease means without ease. It means not at peace, not comfortable. And when you add just regular stresses to life, it can be explosive. Disorder means without order, chaotic. I'm thinking this or I'm feeling that and they don't match. So, healing is about gaining some kind of control over yourself. Post traumatic healing is about recovering the ease, recovering order. It's about organizing and ordering your emotions, organizing your feelings, organizing your thoughts, knowing that you are feeling anger. I'm feeling anger in response to this. This is what I can do about it. I am feeling sadness in response to this, and this is what I can do about it. So we really have to name it to tame it, right? If we can name the emotion, we can address the emotion, we can control the emotion. If we can feel the emotion, we can heal the damage. So name it to tame it, feel it to heal it. We must validate the feeling. We must allow, we must permit the feeling so that we can stop the bleeding. So many emotions are trapped in the post traumatic prison, hiding and avoiding our feelings actually strengthens the walls of the prison, ironically. It continues the stigma and it justifies the judgment and the guilt and the shame. Permission is the process toward freedom. Post traumatic healing is about emotional management, not emotional avoidance. Feel all of your feelings: happy, sad, angry, mad, joy, bliss, pain. They all come and they pass. But feeling all of your feelings, validating all of your feelings, it's what healing is about. It's what order is about. It's what post traumatic order, post traumatic healing is about. Feelings are how we know we care, it's how we know we're alive. Fight, flight, freeze, yes. And, right? And that's a temporary survival tool. We're not meant to stay frozen. The numbing necessary to survive a traumatic event is not suited for long term living. It's not suited for a fulfilling and happy life. Chronic freeze equals chronic dis-ease. If you numb and avoid fear and anger, you also numb and avoid love and joy. All feelings matter. Every emotion is a message. And post traumatic healing is about learning how to respond to these messages in validating and supportive ways. It's what mental health is about, it's what mental order is about. We all have some level of anxiety, some level of depression, some level of post traumatic stress, but we don't all have disorder. And maybe the difference is as simple as permission, permission to feel. If you feel it, you can heal it. If you feel it, you can name it, you can validate it, you can organize it. And so maybe PTSD can become PTSO. Anxiety disorder can become anxiety ordered. Depression disorder can be depression ordered. Sounds pretty simple, right? I know simple is not easy. First, we need permission to move toward that courage, toward that commitment, toward freedom, toward healing. So, here's to love, hope, and healing post traumatically. Thank you again for your time and your permission. And until next time, be well.